I hope everyone can see the screen. So you all are going to read the situations, the dilemmas, and then you can unmute yourself when I say that yes, you're ready after 10 minutes. Like, yet I think 10 minutes is fine. And you can unmute yourself and answer what is your solution or what is your say to the issue. And then Mr. Andy can give us insight on how to look at that. Actually, I did a activity of, you remember, Mr. Andy, life votes. I remember that there were 3 people who got immediately impressed by you, other than me, besides me. Okay, so I'm always impressed by you. Okay,
Very
so
nice of you to say.
we are sharing the screen currently, and can you read the screen, all of you? Is it clearly visible to all of you? Okay, so you all can read and then you can unmute yourself. I don't need to speak up again. You can just unmute yourself and give a solution and or propose whether you would say that the person's action is justified or how would you help in the situation. And then Mr. Andy can give us the insight. Amar, can you be the facilitator for this session and please give Irtiza the chance? Because I saw Irtiza raising the hand earlier.
I have an answer for the old woman in the airport. For that one, I know I won't be able to help as well as someone with better capabilities or as if it's their job. So the first thing I would do would find someone who would be able to help them, like a medical expert or the security over there, and then I would proceed to my flight. And the possibility of me missing my flight would be less because when I analyze the situation in airports, they usually wait for the passengers and have last calls and stuff. So if I analyze the situation properly, I won't be able to help the old woman as well as someone professional. So first find the professional and then make sure she's all right and then move to my flight.
Anyone else would like to give a different perspective to Mariam's response to the dilemma?
First and foremost, we have to look at the person. This is a life we're talking about. It's an old woman's life, and so there are a couple of things you have to consider. Where are you flying to? What are you flying for? Is it really important? Is it life and death? You know, is your mom or dad or someone going to die if you miss it, and you're not going to be there for their death? So this is what I would consider. But also, how badly has the woman fallen? Are you going to miss your flight, or are they going to hold the gate open? If you are going to miss your flight, but it's not very important, and the woman falls to the ground in front of you, it depends on who's around as well. Are there some medical staff arrive? Of course, you must stop and help her. It's the human thing to do. If you can help her until someone else is better qualified than you, then fine. But you know, if she needs an ambulance or if she just needs to sit down, again, what you've got to look at here is the safety of the person. So that's the most important thing.
Thank you, Mr. Andy. Now, can I have someone respond or give a solution to any other dilemma that you can see on the screen?
Okay, so as a small summary, person trying to buy a medication for his wife who's unwell is not able to do so because his current financial status does not um, is not approachable for him to buy the medication that is there, and so he thinks about stealing the medication as it is quite available to him in physically. But I would say this, there's this philosophy that I go towards to is that if you tell the truth in one situation, you might feel hurt or you might feel uncomfortable at that moment. But if you tell a lie, you might have to feel uncomfortable or feel guilty for even longer. So that situation is quite similar to this. So at that moment, maybe Mr. Hines might think that maybe stealing the medication would be a faster method, but it could also create a guiltiness in him. And also, since it's a pharmacy, there are going to be cameras, and of course, he won't just get away with things just because he takes the medication without the acknowledgement of the staff members in the pharmacy. And of course, he could always turn to any other family members or friends to borrow money for the time being until his financial situation has been recovered.
Mr. Andy, your turn.
Well, again, what's the most important thing here is the most important thing is someone's very, very ill. So if you're in the pharmacy and there's no one behind the counter, obviously he's gone into the pharmacy to purchase. We don't know, but let's assume that he hasn't got the money on him, and he was going to speak to the pharmacist about maybe borrowing. If there's no one behind the counter, the medication's in plain view. Should he steal it? No, he shouldn't steal it, of course, because that's wrong. But what he could do is he could leave an IOU there, some kind of note to say, really, really sorry, in dire situation, I will come back and pay you at some time for the medication. But the most important thing here is that his wife is ill, and so human life should come before profit.
I would agree with Mr. Andy, and yes, very nicely responded.
Sorry,
by.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. When about what you said about leaving the note, right? I feel like that's also something that he thinks about. That's a risk, right? What if they don't allow him to take? It's normally in situations we don't really, even a medical, like a hospital, they do consider profit over human lives. Mostly if you're considering a business, a profitable hospital, they do consider profit more often than a single human life. So in this specific case as well, I feel like the pharmacy would lean more on maybe complaining to the police, because they haven't come to a formal agreement or they haven't signed anything. So there's no assurance that the man's gonna pay his dues or pay the money back, right? Isn't it easier, or like since he's in a very dire situation, his wife, that's a priority. It's a human life and it's very, very close to him. Wouldn't you be more like leaning forward to that choice to steal the medication rather than just leave a note or ask to borrow it, especially since no one is there?
Of course, there are many different ways of looking at it. Shame on hospitals for operating on profits and not doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Again, I guess if you look at things personally, you have to take your personal situation into account. Say, for example, if you've been a habitual thief and you've stopped being a habitual thief because you want to going straight back into stealing things, it's just going to lead you back into that. But I guess it depends on what kind of person you are as well. Now, stealing to me is as alien as murder is, and so I would personally leave the note. I think you're not committing a crime, or if you are committing a crime, then you're committing a lesser crime, and it's something that you have to live with yourself as well. So it's about conscience too. So the first thing is life, the second thing is conscience, and so
there are two dilemmas remaining.
I think for the first scenario, you have to take environment into consideration. If the trolley hit what type of trolley it is, and like maybe the weight, or like if it hits the person, will they fall to their deaths, or like is there lava something below them? Or I think like environment should come into consideration when you're choosing something of that sort. I feel like all of these scenarios, they can be based on a single ethical consideration. For everyone, there's a different answer, because depending on the situation, each circumstance is different. What the person may be feeling is different. Like, for example, if that one person, perhaps it's like their parent or a relative or someone close to them, they'd obviously choose the 5 people rather than the single person. So I think that should be a concern as well, like something that you would think about.
I would strongly agree with Mantasi. I would like to state an incident that happened with me during my first interviews. And when I returned home, I told my mom I'm not going to get the job. And I did get the job. So what happened was the interviewer asked me, like, I just finished my engineering, computer engineering. So he was asking me different questions on how you could model or simulate situations. I think ICT and computer science students would understand that. Like, modeling a situation is anticipating what can happen in a certain circumstance given the parameters. So he said, can you model a situation if you're so good at programming, can you model a situation if you break this glass, how many pieces will it break into? And I said yes. I took the glass and I threw it on the floor.
Was your guess right?
My guess was that whatever you see right now is how I would analyze the situation for modeling the class. And I did get a job. And later on, he said that when he called me in for my first briefing, he told his personal assistant, "Can you take the glass away? Miss Amna Manzoor is very good at modeling." So I think that yes, I agree with Mantasi. For ethical considerations, people might have different reactions, but I would like Mr. Andy to shed some insight.
Okay, well, I've come across this scenario before, and normally the 5 people tied to the track are going to die, and the other person is going to die, and you don't know any of them. So what you have to think about here is not whether the one person is going to be the guy who, or the girl who invents a cure for cancer, or the 5 are all a bunch of murderers, because you don't know them, you don't know what the situation is. It's about saving life or lives. So the ethical thing to do is to save the 5 people rather than the one. But again, people, so some say, should we intervene here or should we let God do the work? But someone's already tied people to a track. A mad philosopher. I don't know why a mad philosopher would do that, but he has done. And so, yeah, again, for me, the point is about saving as many lives as possible. So you flip the switch and wipe the one person out and say sorry to them.
But honestly, for the scenario too, if you really want to do something good, you should throw yourself out, actually. Why should you, without informed consent, throw someone else? If you really want to do some good and do something less unorthodox, you throw yourself and stop that.
I love Madina's response. Like, I think that's beyond humanity. Like, it's a very good response. Why would you do something? Why would you harm someone else when you can, sacrifice yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, several considerations were taken, and you can just throw it. It will be less harmful for everyone.
But
Okay.
I'm going to stay in the trolley when you're there. I'm going to stay in your trolley.
how do we know that you jumping would stop it? I mean, is this scenario 2 or scenario 1 we're talking about?
We are talking about scenario 1.
No, scenario.
Scenario 2, probably. Okay.
Okay, scenario 2 then, yeah. But then again, it comes, if you were in that situation, would you really jump?
But would that
Would you
other
have that?
jump and sacrifice himself? Maybe he has some other priorities. Maybe
But
he
he's
himself.
not jumping, you're pushing him.
So why should you push him? Push yourself.
In that situation, would you really? I mean, would anyone want to sacrifice themselves? I mean, I get that it's a very selfish thing to do. It is, in fact, very selfish thing to do. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think most people would prioritize themselves over someone else.
So the thing is, if I say yes now, can you prove that I would do it, right? Even if we say yes or no now, in that situation, what would our mind be like? We can't even say anything right now about it.
I guess it also depends on the relation that you have with those people. If they're strangers or if they're apprentices.
Yeah, basically, like, there are so many variables in this case, so you can't just choose. But then I'm saying, like, it's more ethical to throw yourself instead of, like, bringing someone else upon the.
You have no right to touch.
Yes, of course.
I
It's
think
able to take that time. Able to
in
take
that
up.
situation, that situation, I think ethics would be the last thing on your mind in that situation.
You can't like
judge work in a specific. It's very spontaneous. It's a very spontaneous action.
Andy, bail me out.
You could think about that situation technically.
In any moment where your life is in danger, your first instinct will always be self-preservation in most cases, not self-sacrifice. I mean, your point is valid that ethically you should in fact sacrifice yourself, but the thing is, in that sort of situation, you have to look at the natural logic that would come to someone's mind and the natural nature that we all have, in which we want to preserve ourselves more than whatever we value as of other people's lives. So at the end of the day, ethically, you're right, you would need to jump, but would you really? I mean, realistically, no one would sacrifice themselves if there's a person there that they can just simply push. I mean, no one would willingly do that in any case.
Sarab, there are a few good people in the world, and if Madina has good intentions, we cannot do away with that.
Miss, I'm not talking about bad good intentions, miss. What I'm saying is that it's not about good or bad people, because at the end of the day, even good people, no one wants to die at the end of the day. I mean, even good people want to live, don't they? And in that situation, I think that no one is going to be questioning the fact that they're good or bad. Most people would care about survival the most. I mean, good or bad people, doesn't matter what they are if they're in that situation. The only thing that would influence their decision would be that event, and no one would be able to like push themselves off or jump. Doesn't matter if they're good.
Ma'am, I would also talk about the 5 people. I'm pretty sure the 5 people themselves would not want this one person to sacrifice themselves for those 5 people. I'm pretty sure they themselves would have told that person who was, there to save themselves, rather than save the group of 5 people.
I think those 5 people would want to live more than they care about that other person.
Sorry to
It all comes down to selfishness of the person at the end of the day. Whether it's the 5 people
does.
or that person trying to solve it.
That's the thing, right? You have to think that everyone wants to survive. Because in that situation, I think that anyone, even one of those 5 person, they would value themselves over anyone.
And exactly, and it's not
no one
that
would ever think that that person shouldn't
the 5
sacrifice
people do
themselves.
not actually have a complete assurance whether they would be saved if this one person would be able to sacrifice themselves for those 5 people. What if that person who was trying to fight the danger for those 5 people might not succeed? Then what's the point, right?
Exactly.
He'll be left with additional guilt in his life also. 6 people
I
die
don't think we'll get to an end for this.
wait, can I propose a situation?
Sure.
In the scenario itself, it says that the person could be moved from the bridge to the track. Seeing as how the trolley is hurtling but not already reached the 5 people, how about we just tell the 5 people to come over to the bridge and the trolley just passes by?
That's good, because they never
they've
said
most
they
likely been
tied down
tied.
their legs or anything.
They've most
Yeah,
likely.
but the scenario doesn't say that. It doesn't have any limits in the scenario itself.
That's the thing.
It's
That's
a very
the scenario.
honestly, it's a
very
very
vague.
vast. So there's not
Yeah,
only one.
It is a vague scenario, but it's just a way to play out the scenario and like.
I mean, the point of this is to
Think
find
about it.
answers.
If those 5 people are not tied in any way whatsoever, what's the point of throwing anyone over the bridge? I mean, I don't think anyone would need to be pushed over the bridge if they're not tied to the track. You can
Exactly, we can just move them.
So I mean, I think that the situation is taken into account the fact that they are in fact tied.
Yeah. So it's better that you try to find a solution to save those people than sacrifice yourself, which you may not even be, completely given assurance that you can, save them if you sacrifice yourself.
But honestly, it can be like a matter of seconds. So you can't just, come up with an idea that is very precise for this scenario. So anything that comes in first in your mind, you're just going to execute it, no matter how ethical or unethical.
Okay.
You could also ask the 5 people, because they're in that situation, right? So
Yeah.
they've been in that situation for more longer than you have experienced to see them being tied up, right? So I'm pretty sure those 5 people might have also, started working their brains on how to get themselves out of that situation. So it's not just one mind playing here. It's all six of the minds playing in here in a small amount of time, trying to come up with a solution. And I think that the human brain works more efficiently when there's pressure put up on you.
Not in all cases.
There's some really good questions here. What about have a look at the last part of the scenario too. How is this case different from the first? Because I think you can go on forever talking about the ethics and morals. How is this case different from the first?
Because the fact that in this case you actually decide who dies and who lives. I mean, in terms of that, you actually push the person. You're actually the cause of that person's, like, the main first cause. That person could just walk away and you could jump yourself, but you decide in this case who lives and who dies. more than in the other.
I think you still decide who lives and who dies, don't you? Because you're either flipping a switch or you're shoving someone off. But
flipping a switch is different
difference?
than pushing someone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, I mean, the second scenario, I mean, how do we know that the other person isn't going to push us?
Yeah, that's what I don't know how that one person might be able to save these people from that danger. Maybe they're not as physically capable to do that, so they can't just take the responsibility to go and be like the superhero or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's two people, both of them next to each other, standing on a bridge. How do we know that it's not, in fact, how do we know that the option isn't given to both people? And so we also have to, take care of our own survival in that case. Not take care not to be pushed. How do we know we won't get pushed?
Mm-hmm.
So, since we're back on this topic again, what would be the first instinct? I personally would actually warn the 5 people, look, there's a trolley, coming towards you. You should probably do something about it. I wouldn't, think that I should jump in front of it or push someone. That would only be the last resort. So, physical action is only the last resort in situations.
I think this scenario is the last resort. I think it doesn't say anything. I think that this scenario, I mean, the only reason it can even exist or that it actually has a dilemma in it is if those 5 people cannot do anything about the trolley.
Exactly, that's what I was thinking.
That's what we have to consider. I mean, if we consider they can move, then really there's no dilemma. You just tell them to move. But if they're tied down, it is a dilemma. Stop it or not?
Exactly. Because
and I mean, really, this is a millisecond decision. You really, I don't think you would have the time when a trolley is hurtling towards people to ask them or even to ask the person next to you if he's willing to because I mean, it would take a very long time for that person to decide if or not he wants to sacrifice himself, or 2, how do you know that they would be able to answer the people that are in the trolley? So you have to make a decision very quick, I think, and that's why it's a dilemma.
Okay, we have to conclude this workshop. I would like to thank Mr. Andy, and this discussion can go on if you guys want to stay in. Mr. Andy, thank you so very much, and I hope that in future, if you're available, we can have similar workshops where our students can build on their skills.
Yeah, for sure. May I just add something here to this scenario? I think you guys are all kidding yourself. I don't think anyone's going to push anybody. I don't think anyone's going to flip a switch. I think what you'll do is take your phone out and film it and stick it on YouTube or TikTok or something.
Or you just run away, I think. Or just leave. I mean, how do you?
Most people would just leave.
Yeah, most people
leave,
would leave.
You're not.
People.
Yeah, you just leave.
So the sad thing is that society has come to that if it's not me being in that position, it's not my problem, which I am against. I feel like it is a very negative mindset
thing, but it exists.
It exists. It's not with everyone, but it does exist. Yeah.
Yeah, I think lots of people would take a phone out and film it rather than do something about it. You see people standing around encouraging fights and filming it, and all manner of horrible things going on.
That is, I think, what many or very little or few people would do, because it is the type of situation that we're in right now. Mindset.
Yeah, it's true. Before I leave, I'd like to say thank you all for the invite. It's been a pleasure speaking with you and listening to your ideas and listening to your conversations. And hopefully we'll do it again soon, fingers crossed.
Someone has a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Zainab Afzal. She's asking if you are currently working on a poetry book, and can you give her a few guidelines on how you published your first book? And how did you receive the recognition of it over time?
Okay, self-publishing is very easy. You just go to Amazon, you format your book, you make a cover, and you stick it. Or Amazon will put a cover on for you. So that's very easy. if you're talking about getting a book published by a publisher, that's far more difficult, and it's not something I can talk about in a couple of seconds. I'd need to do that over a longer time. So perhaps that's what we could do some other time.
Andy, you're publishing. You're looking for poems, right? I told them something about poems. I really forgot. Can you just inform them, and then I can take it from there?
Yeah, for sure. I've just put a book of poetry together. What I wanted to do was encourage, because lockdown and stuff like that, and finding things to do. I wanted to encourage creativity in people, and so I put the word out to everyone in my contacts list about to write a poem and send it to me. And I'd stick it in a book where they could download or buy the paperback. Essentially, it's to get people to writing and being creative. And so the book is free on Amazon Kindle Unlimited. It's called 50 Plus Shades of Diversity. And it's written by poets from all across the world. So hopefully it's a project that's gonna do well. I'm working on getting a paperback version as well, and also number 2. If we can get another 50 plus people to contribute, then that would be fabulous. So feel free to either send me your poems or via Amna. The only things that we do ask is that they're in English. If you want to do it in a different language and put a translation, then we can do that too. And that it is your original work. So original work and in English or a translation.
Okay, thank you again. So from my side, it's the end, and have a lovely day. Do not forget to join in later on at 1:30 to 2:30. This is a very prestigious event, the Beamline Schools. Thank you, Mr. Andy. Thank you everyone for the session.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.